hear it, so let her tell it. People on the streets say Sabrina speaks. Tune into the show, she will let you know. Tell all your friends and family. Real talk is no joke. You get the news straight up from grassroots and concerns. You hear with some people gone. So tell all your friends to tune in to
Good evening, Cayman. I'm Sabrina Turner, and welcome to Sabrina Speaks, your daily dose of clarity, truth, and community insights. Every weekday from 5 to 6:30 p.m., we're tackling the issues that affect you, from national headlines to grassroots concerns. Whether you're in traffic or winding down your day, this is your chance to hear it straight and speak your truth. So buckle up, Cayman. We're not holding back.
This is the show. We gotta let you know. Now we got to go.
And now here's Sabrina.
Yes, hi. Welcome to another episode of Sabrina Speaks. Yes, tonight we're talking about law that touches every one of us right here in the Cayman Islands. And what law or piece of legislation I'm referring to? I'm referring to the Cayman Islands Defense Act and the regiment, that act actually created. And we will also get into when the regiment was first introduced. It was presented at that time as a helping hand and a team that responds to hurricanes, floods, and emergencies. A force to stand shoulder to shoulder with us in times of crisis. But as the laws are written in ink, not in speeches. And what the law says matters just as much as what we're told. So let's break it down together in plain Caymanian terms. That is the aim this evening. I am Sabrina, and welcome to this episode of Sabrina Speaks, Voices of the Islands, Conversations for the World, the podcast where voices rise, stories unfold, and inspiration takes center stage. Now, the content you're about to hear, including any discussions or opinions from myself, guests, and our participants, is intended solely for general information and entertainment purposes. It's not a substitute for professional legal, medical, or financial advice. I encourage you to consult with a qualified professional for your specific concerns. Now, Bridge Media Limited and all its affiliates disclaims all liability for any decisions or actions taken in reliance on the information presented here. 345-936-8255 is the number to call and be a part of this discussion, because you are so important to this discussion, and definitely we always want to hear from you. I'm still fighting the fight of whatever it is I'm fighting, but I'm not going to let it get the upper hand of me. And we have to continue to bring it real and live. I was telling Sandra earlier on, I can't say I'm not going to show up to work because I can't spread my bugs with the office staff. The only office staff is Chance, and even him is not even around. So I'm here, and I'm going to deliver to you as promised and to the best of my ability. But before we're going into any more, let me share with you the weather forecast for tonight and into tomorrow. Now, the synopsis calls for residual moisture from a trough is expected to lead periods of cloudiness and an increased chance of isolated showers across the Cayman Islands over the next 24 hours. Now, light and variable winds and seas are expected from Wednesday morning, and satellite images show a scattered layer of clouds across the Northwest Caribbean. The forecast for tonight called for partly cloudy skies with a 30% chance of showers. Excuse me. Temperatures will fall to the mid 70s. Winds will be east to northeast 5 to 10 knots. This evening, varying to the east to southeast 5 to 10 knots from late tonight. Seas will be slight with wave heights of 1 to 3 feet. Now tomorrow, called for partly cloudy skies with a 30% chance of showers. Temperatures will rise to the mid 80s. Winds will be east to southeast at 5 knots or less. Today, veering to the south to southwest at 5 to 10 knots from late tonight. Seas are smooth to slight with wave heights less than 2 feet. Sun will set this evening at 6:05, and tomorrow sun will rise at 7:02. Tomorrow sun will also set at 6:05. Hope you heard it, Jimbo. The outlook is for an increase in cloudiness and showers from late Thursday night as a cold front approaches the Cayman area. Expect fresh northerly winds and rough seas from Friday morning as the associated high-pressure system builds over the southwest United States, and a small craft advisory will be in effect. So there you have it. We have another cold front that'll be gracing our shores, which we welcome. We prefer that, I know, instead of all of the hot temperatures that we normally have here, and it is a welcome to be here in our area. So there you have it for the weather. Make your plans accordingly, and definitely exercise caution when you're out on the roads. We have to do big shout outs today. Yes, big birthday shout outs to Mr. Steve McField, who's celebrating his birthday. Thank you so much for all of you who are sharing your messages on our social media channels and all of the CMR.TV.com platforms as well. I share in those sentiments here from all of us here on the Sabrina Speaks show. We thank you for your service, your continued sharing of your knowledge, history, facts, realities, civic education, and still doing your part even in the legal industry. I wish you have are enjoying your birthday, Mr. McField, and I wish you many, many more. So happy birthday to you from all of us here on the Sabrina Speaks family. And for those of you who want to share those wishes, feel free to comment on either pages or all of them so he can feel the love. And also celebrating a birthday with Mr. Steve McField is Mr. Truman Miles today. Oh yeah, Mr. Truman Miles, happy birthday to you. This gentleman is like a father to me, and I raised up with him definitely in the church. But let me tell you something. He is like, I consider him and Miss Alva, his wife, my parents. That's the close relationship that we have. All of his sons, Sean, Durrani, Delroy, Onika, they're not going to tell you anything else. We're brothers and sisters. And he and Miss Alva have played that role in so many of our lives growing up in the Seventh-day Adventist church family. And I have never seen this man. He's firm and he packs a punch. But when it comes to being steadfast in his works in the ministry of at the church and holding us young people together, he's definitely a force to reckon with. I remember those days at their house in the dikes, those days that is all now developed. Those were the days you can reminisce. He has a love for farming, a passion for growing mangoes and anything that comes from the earth, and even cattle. So yes, Mr. Truman, thank you as well for all that you have done in being one of the foundation and cornerstone of Seventh-day Adventist Church, especially Georgetown Seventh-day Adventist. And you've definitely left your mark also in the emergency response, where you were in charge of our ambulance drivers, ambulance officers, call it what you may, prior to your retirement. You are an electrician as well. And from what I'm understanding, you did the electrical work in my grandparents' house right there off of Elgin Avenue back in the day. So look, kudos to you. Many, many more birthdays from all of us here on the Sabrina Speaks family. And I love you beyond. I thank you for the role that you have continuously played in my life, and you continue to play. And thank you for everything that you have done. And that's both of you gentlemen. And I wish you all the best and many, many more birthdays to come. So yes, continue to share the birthday greetings to Mr. Steve McField and Mr. Truman Miles on our social media channels. And we thank you both for all that you continue to do. And I can say on behalf, Mr. Truman, of all of your children, that's all of us. Your biological, your church ones, your surrogates, and even those that were attached to you almost like a magnet. From all of us today, happy birthday, Daddy. We appreciate and we love you lots. There you go. So let's see who's here. Connie Bonnie, good evening. How are you? Yes, it's good to have you here with us. And Harry Brandon, oh yes, you're here as well. Good to have you join us. And we're going to get into it, though, before we start asking all of the questions, Harry. So allow me to at least present it. I love your feedback. I love your dialogue. I love your participation. Thank you so much. Marshall is also here with us this evening. Damian Henry, good to have you here as well. Yes, Kim Norris shares the love. Hello, beautiful Sabrina. Yes, yes, yes. I did before bed. Yeah, tea. Yep. I've been doing that. A lot of this mint tea with ginger and stuff. It's just like the aches, the entire body aches. I don't have chills or anything like that. And it's just weird ticklish cough. So I'm doing my best. I'm just keeping away from everyone. And my sincere apologies to the family and the kids of Miss El Namoya. I was supposed to read a tribute at her funeral, and I had to respectfully decline because I don't know what's going on. And I'm sending well wishes out and get well as well to my brother, Patrick, who's also not doing well, and he's been hospitalized. And I have had to keep away from him because I don't want one to be in a facility. My immune system obviously is trying to fight something, and I'm trying to protect myself from him. So I'm wishing him all the best as well. And as we keep together strong. So I'm doing everything that I can, Jimbo, to fight this, but work calls and life goes on, eh? O'Neill, good evening. Yes, thank you for sharing in all of those birthday wishes as well. Marshall, I know you will know Mr. Truman very well. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, Harry. To be fair, I shouldn't say that I look into it. Turns out the government in London did agree. There you go. See, a little bit helps. And we're going to go a little bit more into it as well. So yeah, it does help. This is why we take our time and we respect each other's opinions, and then we bring it back around full circle. So you've learned a lot since you have been on this platform, Harry, and we continue to learn and correct each other as needs be. What we don't want to do is to be jumping to conclusions and all sorts of other things. We just learn together and just go and do our fact finding. Darling, it's always good to have you here as well. Thank you for sharing. Marshall, old age, no, you can keep that to yourself. This is not old. I like you. I'm not going to go down without a fight. I could tell you that. Good evening, Miss Lucille from the UK, another one of our UK family members. Yes, happy birthday to Mr. McField is what you meant to say, I'm sure. And still looking great. And also Mr. Truman, wishing you all many more birthdays. Thank you, Miss Lucille, for sharing that. I'm quite sure they will see it here. Now let's take a turn as you all continue to share and let people know that Sabrina Speaks is live right here on the CMR TV platform. Please don't forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe, and tell a friend to join in the conversation as we continue to elevate talk and definitely continue to speak civics and learn every day, each episode, also steered by each and every one of you. Let's just look at news headlines, some of the news headlines that is making talk around in the world and definitely in our region. Right here at home, we noticed that one of those big headlines that are making talk here is that we are seeing that tourism is on a rebound, and Cayman's winter tourism season is off to a good start. I know what I have been seeing while I'm driving along 7 Mile corridor. Both sides of the road, the restaurants are full. And these are not only locals, these are actually persons who are visiting our shores. And this goes to prove just what you can see, because hotels are reporting high occupancy, and also cruise arrivals, we have seen an increase as well. Another headline that it's making its way in the Cayman Islands is that e-bikes and also micro mobility laws, other means instead of cars, that sort of stuff. Please remember that enforcement begins as of January 16th, and the National Road Safety Committee confirmed that these laws are governing e-bikes, scooters, and similar devices that will be enforced. And we know one of the conversations were making sure there were some challenges in actually getting insurance coverage for these e-bikes and scooters, that sort of stuff. And from what we're hearing is that has now being resolved, and persons can actually get insurance. What we're seeing is that riders have been given notice since July of 2025, plus a 4-week education campaign. And many are now, they're finding that they're registering and adjusting their use to meet the Traffic Act requirements, because the police now, who will be responsible for enforcing these laws for all commuters who use these e-bikes and scooters, making sure that they're licensed. I hear people are now asking for helmets to be worn and so forth. So let's see if this continues to evolve. Now, authorities here in the Cayman Islands continue to stress that e-bikes must follow the same road rules as cars to reduce accidents and also to improve safety. Yes. We're seeing an increase here as well, turning to motor vehicle accidents, still here in the Cayman Islands, that we've seen a cyclist was knocked down, if you haven't heard, around the 10th on the Rex Crichton Boulevard. And the driver, that was a hit and run, fled the scene, and police are still actually investigating, while more vehicles and these devices, these e-bikes and so forth, share our roads. The Royal Cayman Islands continues to warn about these increase in accident numbers, and accidents highlights the needs for stricter enforcement. I mean, it is what it is, but police cannot be everywhere every time. You know what the laws are, you know what the speed limits are. It's obvious that people are not driving the speed limits on some roads. They're not wearing seatbelts. They're not, they're using their cell phones and that sort of stuff. They're not driving with due care and caution, and things happen. So at the end of the day, these accidents are showing where we need stricter enforcement, yes, and public awareness campaigns can only take us so far, but everybody at the end of the day is responsible to do their part as well. Also making local news, we see where there has been an incident again on January 10th of a 60-year-old Canadian man who died, unfortunately, after experiencing difficulties while resurfacing from a dive trip off West Bay Public Dock. Now, the Cayman Islands Coast Guard and EMS attempted CPR, but the gentleman was pronounced dead at our hospital. This is so far the second water-related death in the Cayman Islands for 2026, and it's definitely raising safety concerns again for visitors and locals alike. There has been speculation and conversations about whether or not these boats are equipped, whether all of the staff are actually CPR qualified, and AED machines being used and all of that sort of stuff. So will this continue to evolve, and protocols as to how we handle these things, where consents are concerned, consent forms that people have to do certain things to declare their medical history and all of that sort of stuff. You know, it does call for a broader conversation, but we'll leave it to the powers that be to actually do what we have to do, because it can do its impact on our tourism product here. So more as this continue to develop, as we continue to engage and hear more as the community responds to these incidents and the reputational damages and risk that it could have to our tourism product. And if you think that the power of the people do not have value in decisions that government makes, and it actually can help chart directions a government take. Look at this news as we switch it over now to the United Kingdom. Just minutes, literally minutes before coming live, BBC posted a story. Look at this. The UK government drops plans for mandatory digital ID to work in the United Kingdom. Now, have you heard this? It is just hot off the press, like really just making its rounds here. Because what we're seeing is that now with this, thanks to the BBC News, reported that the UK government has now dropped plans to make digital ID compulsory for providing the right to work. And ministers state that the scheme will remain voluntary after strong public backlash over privacy and civil liberties. Now, they also further to say, well, while digital checks may still be introduced, workers won't be forced into a national ID system, at least for now. It's being called another government U-turn and a signal that public trust is shaping tech policy. Yes. Now, if you know that there's been conversations here about us introducing our own national ID, look at what happened here. And in layman's terms, we've seen where the Labour government now had previously announced that this digital ID would be required. This is in the United Kingdom, for the record, for those of you who are just joining me, that we saw where the Labour government had previously announced that the digital ID would be required to prove someone's right to work in the United Kingdom, right? And what we're seeing now, that ministers have abandoned this compulsory element, saying that the scheme will now be voluntary. So they've actually withdrew their mandatory, making it mandatory. And what has caused this move? Because of criticisms across the political spectrum that mandatory digital ID intrusive is what some of them are saying, and risk creating a national ID card by stealth. That's what is really being actually thing. And what it does, it signals that public pushback really matters. And the government, is showing it's listening to concerns about privacy and also surveillance. Now, dropping the compulsory element here reassures citizens there in the United Kingdom that they won't be forced into now, as previously announced, into a digital ID system. And even though while the compulsory ID is off the table, ministers still say that they're committed to digital right to work checks, though. And that means for some of digital verification, some form is likely, but details will definitely follow after more consultation. So you know what? For workers, what this means for you is that you don't need a digital ID card to get to keep your job. And for employers, the right to work checks will still go digital, but in some form, but not in the way that forces every worker into a national ID system, right? And where it comes from the political side of things, I'm seeing here, it shows right now how technology, privacy, and migration policy is colliding with the debates and how governments balance control, even with public trust. So there you go, latest there. And you hear us talking here, the importance of giving feedback and the importance of speaking out. Is this an example of that? Let's see. Now, just keeping it to the top headlines very quickly, moving on here in the United States, a little closer to us here in the Cayman Islands, we see where President Trump has been briefed on the new military options for strikes against Iran amidst intensifying protest and violence. Yeah, that's one of the headlines that's definitely making its way amongst others. Like there's also the key of protest to acts for the to have ICE abolished. We are seeing where nationally in the United States, protest continues nationwide as tens of thousands have marched in Minneapolis and other cities after we know the fatal shooting of Nicole Good by an ICE agent. Yeah. So a new survey shows that 42% right now of Americans are now supporting abolishing ICE in the highest level since the agency was created back in 2003. And demonstrators are framed around this ICE's use of force and its role in immigration enforcement. So really, that's what's happening and what is continuing to make news headlines over there in the United States, just like this one as well. Look at this. Just before noon, I saw where that headlines are just going all over social media platform that the Clintons refuse Epstein's testimony. Yeah, and the White House Oversight Committee, led by Republicans, this subpoenaed Bill Clinton, the former president, and Hillary to testify about their ties to Jeffrey Epstein. And both the Clintons have denied, calling the subpoenas illegal and unforeseeable and partisan. And they argue that they're already provided what little information they had. So this is a developing story. And like everywhere else, I'm quite sure it'll be flooding your social media channels as well. What we also see is in the Caribbean, making its rounds on some of the top news here in the Caribbean, is that illegal gun trafficking crackdown, as Caribbean governments are coordinating to fight a regional gun running network. So this is all developing right on our front doors. And big talks again in headlines for the Caribbean is also between Cuba and Venezuela oil dispute, as Trump has warned that Cuba will no longer receive Venezuelan oil or money, urging Havana to make a deal. So there you have it. That's the latest on the headlines that are making it locally, United Kingdom, United States, and definitely right here in our Caribbean region. Harry says, good for the Labour government for reversing that policy. It was extremely unpopular and it was extremely unnecessary. They keep doing this ridiculous thing of passing a policy knowing it's going to be unpopular to reverse it a couple months later. There you go. Cornish Man 72 says the UK government realizes that it will be booted out at the next election. That's the only reason. And Harry continues to say, or what they do is that they get told there's a crisis. They go, it isn't a crisis. And then 3 months later, announce a plan to respond to the crisis they think doesn't exist. Starmer is the worst prime minister in history. Bring back Boris. That is a statement made by Cornish of 72. And the real Michelle, hey, how are you doing today on this fabulous Tuesday? Well done, UK, she says. And Harry says, we just got to get the Online Safety Act scrapped. Well, we'll definitely keep to see where that is. There we go. So, Damien Henry. Yes. The UK Prime PM keep having U-turns on his stupid policies. We won't go down without a fight. They can't penalize us for not managing and controlling the borders. There we go. So Real Michelle said, so glad to hear that citizens have awoken. Pull the plug on adherent control. There we go. So let's get into the history of the Defense Act of 2020. And let's again encourage you to join in the conversation. Yes, as let's explain it in layman's terms here in the Cayman Islands. That is the history of the Defense Act 2020. There'll be times I will be sharing snippets as well with you so that it makes sense, so that you don't think it's me saying things, but it's actually what is stated, excuse me, in the actual act. 345-936-8255 is the number to call to be a part of the discussion. I will do my best to keep up with all of the comments. Yes, and your feedback as best as I can. Just be respectful and understand that we are all entitled to our opinions and you're all welcome. The key is, remember to be respectful at all times. So let's get straight into it. And We know that you were asking about the Defense Act of 2020. First of all, we have to go back into history. And like I said, you're welcome to chime in at any point in time, be it you're going to call, you're going to send me a message, or you're going to WhatsApp. Your feedback is always welcome. I will break this down in layman's terms, step by step, and whatever questions may come out of what you're hearing, feel free to ask them. I will do my best to respond in accordance to the subject matter that is at hand. Now, the Defense Act of 2020, when I did my research, is the Cayman Islands law that formally created the Cayman Islands Regiment. So in simple terms, what that is, it gave the regiment its legal powers, and it also explains its duties. Its duties meaning defense, disaster relief, and support to the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service and Coast Guard. And that piece of legislation sets out how it operates under the governor's authority. Now, I know that based on the discussions that we had, it was constitution. We went into the act itself, the powers of the governor, whether or not at any point in time our regiment officers can be sent to war. All of that I'll cover. I aim to cover in this segment of Sabrina Speaks, or in this episode of Sabrina Speak. But let's go back a little bit into giving you a backstory. And you have to understand where we're coming from in order to understand how we got here. Now, we know that us here in the Cayman Islands has always relied on the United Kingdom for defense. Contrary to what you may feel, you have heard me said all the time, proximity matters, hence the heavily influence of the United States and even Canada, right? Regional as well. As far back, when you look, going back to the colonial era, as far back as the 1600s, Jamaica's governor was told to oversee Cayman security. And by the late 1700s, for historical context, Fort George was built in Georgetown as a small local fort. It still is there today. Okay. Now, after 1962, when Jamaica became independent, the Cayman Islands, as we know, and still is today, remained a British overseas territory. And then on, the United Kingdom alone was responsible for Cayman's defense. Plain and straight, it's just the facts. Now, for decades, what we have seen here in the Cayman Islands is that Cayman had no local military unit, only police and civil authorities. Now, disaster response, as we can see, relied heavily on outside help, especially after hurricanes. And that's where we have to raise our hats until the formation of the regiment to our fire officers. And those were the guys who were going out in the height of all of our hurricanes and storms and pulling people out and that sort of stuff with their equipment. We raise our hats to our fire officers, right? Going back for historical context. 2019 to 2020, we have acknowledged now that the United Kingdom helped establish the Cayman Islands Regiment as part of a broader push to, at that time, to strengthen resilience of overseas territory jurisdiction. And the regiment then was designated to focus, hence the birth of it, on disaster relief, humanitarian aid, and limited defense support. Okay? When it comes to the Defense Act of 2020, that was passed by the Cayman's Parliament law, officially created the regiment, hence its birth. It needed a piece of law in order for it to make sense. And what that piece of law did, it spelled out the duties of the regiment, the powers of the regiment, and the authority. And in short, which we will go into it a little bit more, is that the duties of the regiment, as stated by this law, is defending the islands. And in defending the islands, it also is assisting the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service and Coast Guard when asked, and providing, as I said earlier on, humanitarian and disaster relief. Now, the powers is that members can be required to train, serve locally or abroad, and I'll get there, and they may also carry firearms when authorized. Okay, this is all covered under the Defense Act. And the authority of the regiment is that the governor, after, as we broke it down yesterday, consulting with the premier. And the governor of the day decides when the regiment, in consultation with the premier, and sometimes in this case, even the minister in which the regiment falls under. But the governor decides when the regiment is deployed. The reason why I say that like that is because the regiment gets paid a stipend. And currently, the current construct of how the governor's office is structured, even though it's under her decision or their decision, that position's decision to deploy the regiment, for them to be paid, those funds are then out of the ministry in which the regiment falls under for them to be compensated. Only because the governor's office does not have an output to pay them. Okay. So bottom line is, in consultation with the premier, and of course, decides when the regiment is deployed. But it is a harmonious relationship, not only with the premier, but also the minister of that department, responsible for that department as well. So what it means is that Cayman now has somewhat its own local force, but for clarity, it is not a full army. It is a small trained unit forced on resilience. The United Kingdom, for the matter of this conversation, still handles big defense matters like military threats, in which we're seeing the geopolitical climate around us that has actually brought a lot of conversation. And what we're seeing is that the regiment is more about helping Cayman stand ready until help arrives. What also we have found in my discovery or discussion and research is that this act, this piece of legislation, also ensures that the regiments operate legally with clear rules about duties, weapons, and also command. So you may ask, where do we stand? And I'm hoping that how we're breaking this down now at the end of the day, it brings a little bit more context. And as we continue to educate and understand a lot of these things here, that it will all make sense and add in to what we're saying here. So in a nutshell, for what I did from an historical context, is that the Defense Act of 2020 is Cayman's way of pretty much saying, we have our own regiment to help in disasters, support the Coast Guard and the police, and provide basic, very basic defense if needed. But the UK then is still responsible for our overall protection. Okay. Some were saying, well, then what was the purpose of having it? Why was it formed? Again, I am responding to a lot of the questions and commentary that was made on previous episodes. And the regiment was pitched as a unit to help during hurricanes, floods, and other natural disasters. And it was decided that, as a support team in relief operations, delivering supplies and assisting in communities. And at the end of the day, it also helped with community resilience, because leaders emphasized that the regiment would then strengthen at the time, and still continues to this day, strengthen Cayman's ability to bounce back from crisis without relying entirely on outside forces. So when looking at the Defense Act of 2020, it actually, with a broader legal mandate, the regiment is legally empowered to act in defense of the Cayman Islands, not just in disaster relief either, but until, because remember now, I said it before, support law enforcement, that they can assist police and other agencies in maintaining order if needs be. And where governance and management is concerned, this piece of law also sets out the chain of command. It also sets out discipline and authority, similar to military structures, okay? I think what has caused a lot of confusion is the choice of words that normal everyday citizens are not accustomed to here in the Cayman Islands. War, military, soldiers, that sort of stuff. We're not accustomed to it. And because we didn't really do a better job at educating and even breaking it down in layman's terms, is why I felt that this piece of act, not perfect, it has some loopholes in it, but I feel that's why there were some apprehension, some resistance, and actually some almost type of rejection from the public, because we just was not publicly educated enough on it. But the regiment is not a standing army, okay? It is not a standing army, but a reserve force, which means it can be mobilized when needed. And what that is that while it's not a full-time military, the law does in some way give it powers to go beyond just disaster relief. Now, here's the truth, right? We've covered it supports police operation. You have said, and we have heard it here over and over again, public debates about it. When we saw all of the equipment and machinery coming in to back it up, we know that we have had a number of Caymanians that have gone to Sandhurst for training, which I'll get into that. What is that? Where is that? Why? I can get into that a little bit as well. But here's the truth. Here's the truth. The regiment was sold as a humanitarian team, a disaster unit. And yes, that's a part of the role. But when you look at it, it almost seems as though what is being said, what is put at the forefront, and what the law says, the Defense Act also makes it a defense force with powers that extends into security and law enforcement. Now, for clarity, that doesn't mean that those powers will be used every day, but it does mean that they exist. And as citizens of the Cayman Islands, everyone is saying we deserve honesty and transparency about what is written in our laws, hence this discussion. And the question isn't whether the regiment helps us in hurricanes, because we have proven it does. The question is whether the power holds match the promises that we were given. And that's a conversation worth having openly, but coming from an informed perspective where you can actually see what the law says. Okay. I know some of you have asked as well, and it came up yesterday, can a member of the regiment be called to fight if the United Kingdom calls? And even though that was a very great question, sparked a lot of feedback, it really honestly gets to the heart of what the Cayman Islands Regiment is and is not. We've said here that it was created under the Cayman Islands Defense Act, and I have it here, the Defense Act of 2020, and to serve the Cayman Islands primarily in disaster response, humanitarian aid, and support civil authorities. It is not part of the United Kingdom standing military. And members of the Cayman Islands Regiment are not automatically subject to overseas deployment at all, like the British Army soldiers. However, there is a UK connection, and I will try to bring this over here so you can see. I want to show you the law that covers outside of the Cayman Islands. So let me screen grab this for you so it makes sense. And I'm taking this straight out of the law, okay? I'm going to give you this so that when I'm talking, you can actually see it for yourself. But yeah, what we're seeing now about whether or not they can serve, let's pull this up here. I am going to explain that right now. Okay, there we go. Yeah, let me just give this, because it does make a difference when I'm actually speaking and you can see it if you're not able to do it yourself. There we go, found it. I know a couple of you had asked about, well, what if they call us to the United Kingdom? And there we have it. The military service to perform inside and outside the island, right? And what we're seeing, if the UK voluntary services abort, now if the UK requests support, Caymanian authorities have to agree, and individual members would likely have to volunteer, because there's right now no legal obligation in the act that forces Cayman Regiment members to fight overseas, okay? So I'm hoping that this creates that. And you see here on what I have on the screen, the duties of the regiment in itself. Now, in plain terms, no members of the Cayman Islands Regiment cannot be compelled to fight in the United Kingdom in a war, because it clearly states it, that their legal role is local disaster relief, security support, and resilience in Cayman. And any overseas services would be a matter of choice and agreement, not an obligation. Now, when you look at what I have here, in accordance with the Defense Act of 2020 that is posted on the screen, a member of the regiment may be required to perform military services, including training and non-combat services, both inside and outside the islands, in accordance with this law. Now, what that says is that a member of the regiment may be required to perform military services, including training and non-combatant services, both inside and outside of the islands, in accordance with the law as stated there. And really what that means in layman's terms is that military service doesn't mean fighting. It covers all duties the regiment is set up to do. Yes, I agree. But training also means it can be asked to, that members can attend courses and exercises and keep their skills sharp. And what we're also seeing is that non-combatant services for those persons, it means tasks that don't involve fighting. Things like disaster relief, humanitarian aid, logistics, or supporting civil authorities. Okay. Yeah, 695. I got some stuff coming in. So here we go. Okay, I'll get to that in a sec. Okay. So both inside and outside the islands means you could be asked to serve in Cayman or abroad. For example, helping after a hurricane in another Caribbean territory, or even joining a training exercise overseas. Now, in accordance with the said law that I have here on the screen, it means any requirement must follow the rules set out in accordance to the Defense Act, unless it's amended And right now, this act is what's in standing right now. So it is unlimited. It's bounded by this Cayman legislation. Okay. So if you're just joining us, welcome to this episode of Sabrina Speaks. We're talking right now about the Defense Act of 2020 and exactly about the regiment and its powers, its functions, its duties, how they perform, and whether or not the United Kingdom can actually summon them to go to a war. That's where we're at. So in plain translation of what that is that if you join the Cayman Islands Regiment, you must agree that you can be called to train regularly. You can be called to help out in emergencies, and we have seen that demonstrated here locally, and possibly travel abroad for training or humanitarian missions. We have also seen that here, but not be automatically sent into combat or war zones, as the law emphasizes non-combatant duties. Okay, so I'm hoping we can actually calm those fears down with those choice of words. Okay, now we saw where some of our own Caymanians have actually been sent off, and congratulations to our Caymanians who have had the honor and the privilege to have attended, paid by the Cayman Islands government, the Royal Military Academy of Sandhurst. Now, what that is, people may hear of it. It's a British Army's premier officer training school that is designed to prepare future leaders, both from the United Kingdom and abroad. And for that actually trains them for command, discipline, and responsibility. And when I double checked on Sandhurst, their motto is serve to lead. And every officer in the British Army regularly or reserve trains before they are actually commissioned. And again, me looking further into it, the officer training, what we've noticed with Sandhurst that our Caymanians, a number of our Caymanians have actually attended. All British Army officers, regular and reserve, as I said, are trained there. And cadets learn to lead soldiers responsibly. And, we have a very active cadet team here in the Cayman Islands that even has a fire cadets, a sea cadets that operates under the Coast Guard. And they are continuing to blossom and bloom as they transition then possibly into the regiment or into the uniform services as well. But what we are also seeing at Sandhurst is that cadets also learn to lead soldiers responsibly, embodying the Academy's motto, serve to lead. And when we talk about combat readiness, training of our officers ensures officers are definitely prepared to lead in battle and operational environments. In our case, it's non-combatant, but it actually plants the seed in the event that they migrate, that they get other job opportunities, because that's what we do in investing in our people. Now, there is an international reach when it comes to Sandhurst. Many nations send their officer cadets and officers, period, to Sandhurst, recognizing its high level. It's actually being named as world-class military academy. And for those of you who are wondering, well, where did that come out from? Because there's a similar one in the Caribbean. Back in 1947 was when that was founded, after merging with the Royal Military Academy, Woolwich of 1741. It's amazing how far back you can go to see understanding history and bringing it forward to how we can benefit our young men and women here and around the world, and of course, regionally. But this is going back from as far back as 1947, and then it goes even further back to 1741. And again, its foundation was off the principles and from even the Royal Military College of Sandhurst of 1801. So more of the history is that it became the sole center at that time for Army officers' education in the UK back in the 1970s. They were the only one. And it included women officers in 1980s, can you imagine, making it fully integrated, because prior to that, female officers were not allowed. And what it actually does is that standard commissioning courses can last up to 44 weeks. That's how long these courses can be. And what their courses embodies is military tactics, leadership, physical endurance, ethics, and international cooperation, because there are times maybe you got to be lobbying and making deals with other jurisdiction. So the Sovereign's Parade, where cadets graduate in front of dignitaries and families, because they have a ceremonial highlight at the end of all of their training courses as well. So you may say that, what does it matter? The Cayman Islands has spent thousands of dollars in investing in our locals. We have an established piece of working legislation, the Defense Act, that created the birth of the Cayman Islands Regiment. The Cayman Islands government passed and I can say passed and continue to support them presently, have supported investing in our Caymanians and have sent Caymanians over to Sandhurst for training, and in some cases even for refresher courses. But when we talk about our Cayman Islands Regiment, we cannot ignore the Royal Military Academy of Sandhurst. We got to give them kudos because of the type level that is training that is being offered. And we have our own graduates there who have benefited and who have climbed the ranks and continue to climb the ranks. And what it means for us is that Caymanian officers who attend this facility and who are trained there are receiving training to the highest international standards of leadership, discipline, and resilience. And we can see that in the way that they turn around and execute their duties here, and they come back and they impart their knowledge. And they have to maintain that as you create the space for succession planning in the administrative arm of the Cayman Islands Regiment. Now, what they're doing is that they're just not learning how to respond to hurricanes or even to deliver aid. In this training, they're being shaped into leaders who can command and make decisions under pressure and carry the weight of responsibility for their teams. And what we're also seeing for Cayman and why it matters, it means that our regiment isn't just local. It is just not a volunteer group of people who just go to get workouts and to just, this is a huge responsibility. It's connected to global tradition and even to military leadership. And our officers bring back with them, for everyone who we invest in and send offshore, they're able to go away, get those skills, the values, and the credibility that strengthens our own local regiment role here at home. And what we're seeing in the Defense Act that defines the powers, Sandhurst defines their character. And I thought that was so, when you put it all together, that is what is shaping the regiment. And for us in the Cayman Islands, it is actually can be a force that serves, leads, and protect us in a time of need. So if you feel that there is a myth, because some are saying, oh my gosh, the Cayman Islands Regiment is just a group of volunteers and no formal training, the fact is that is not true. Our officers have been trained at other establishments in the United States as well, but Sandhurst stands up, and that we have proven is one of the world's most respected military academies. And I said, that's in the world. And there's another myth that Sandhurst is only for the British Army officers. I hope that you've been able to take away from this that the fact is it trains leaders from across the world, including our very own Caymanians. Yeah, so there we have it. Now, what we can continue, I want to make sure I'm not missing out anything here. Give me a thumbs up if you're liking and you're grasping what I'm saying here, because there's no sense in me babbling on if you're not catching it. And we are going to go into now the duties of, let me grab this so that you can see it here, because I think it's best when I share it with you. I want to go into the duties so that you will understand what the duties of the regiment are for the sake of this presentation. Okay. We got an hour to go, and I think we're covering it quite well. I'm going to just screenshot that for you so that we can, in case the conversation duties. There we go. So let's grab this so that while I'm talking, you can see it's just not me blabbering on here, that I'm really got it. There we go. Yeah, I want to go into the duties of the Defense Act. Yeah. So we got to make sure that we can actually help all of our, show them the support. There we go. Once we have our people duties, there we go. Now I'm going to bring it in. There we go. Yep. Hope you're seeing it. What we see now, in accordance with the Defense Act of 2020, and this is Section 5, it says the regiment is responsible for A, the defense of the islands, B, assisting the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service and the Coast Guard when called upon to do so by the governor, and C, providing such humanitarian assistance and disaster relief and other duties as the governor, after consultation with the premier, determines. And also in 2, you can see on the screen, the performance of their duties, members of the regiment may, with the authority of the commanding officer or the delegate of commanding officer, carry firearms. Now, let's break that down. We have seen right here what that is. And the defense of the islands, let's make it clear. The regiment is officially responsible for protecting the Cayman Islands if there's ever a threat. Now, this doesn't mean that they act like a full army. It means they are the first line of organized defense until the United Kingdom Army Forces step in. Now, when it comes to assisting with the police and the Coast Guard, and I know some of you may be saying, well, oh my gosh, do they go over the police? I'm getting there. Because I know some, when you read this and you see it for yourself, some questions may pop up, right? When it comes to assisting police and the Coast Guard, if the governor asks, the regiment can support the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service or the Coast Guard. Right now, as we know, the regiment sits under the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service. So, for example, crowd control during a major emergency, helping secure ports, or even assisting in search and rescue operations. We've seen where there was an explosion of a gas cylinder and the regiment was there. The latest bird flu scare here, we've seen where the regiment was deployed and they assisted so well for that entire time until it ended. These are all the things that they actually do right now on the ground. And when it comes to humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, we have seen that the regiment can be tasked with disaster response because they have, in some cases, gone over to other jurisdictions as well to assist hurricanes, floods, God forbid, fires, or even regional aid missions. And the governor decides these duties, but must consult with the premier first. Now, how that conversation goes, we're just going to say we're all happy campers here for this conversation, right? We're sticking it to the Defense Act. Now, when it comes to even the carrying of firearms, regiment members can carry weapons. Yes. But only when authorized by their commanding officer or a delegated officer. Yes, Harry, keyword. I like your laugh emojis. I don't like you though, but I love you seeing where you coming like Denny. This ensures that firearms are used under strict control, not casually. And the purpose is to allow them to perform security duties safely and legally when needed. What I also found when I was going through this act is that in the interpretation, part 1 of the preliminary short title of this, in part 2, sorry, the definition of arms under the Defense Act, it says, and I quote, includes batons, handcuffs, and other means of restraints, protective vests, tasers, and pepper spray. That's covered in this law. I'm just letting you know. And at the end of the day, the meaning as defined under the defense law of the Cayman Islands Regiment means the military force established under Section 4 and referred to as the regiment. Now, Section 4 says continuation of the regiment, subject to and in accordance with this law, there continues to be raised and maintained in the islands a reserved military force known as the Cayman Islands Regiment, consisting of a reserve force and shall comprise such member of officers and persons as may from time to time determined by the governor. And a part of that you can see is where I went into the duties of the regiment, which part 3 was right there, okay? So one of those is that they're allowed to carry pepper spray. Now, plain translation of what I was saying of the regiment being a multi-force is that they defend Cayman if needed. In addition to that, they back up the police and the Coast Guard when called as well. And also, the regiment provides disaster relief, humanitarian aid, and they may carry, as I just said, firearms, but only under official orders. That led into the question then, does it mean then that the regiment takes precedent over the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service? Let's make it clear. Let's just explain how the powers then line up, how they all come together. The Royal Cayman Islands Police Service is the primary law enforcement authority in the Cayman Islands. They handle crime, of course, public order, and policing duties day to day. Now, the regiment in itself, the Cayman Islands Regiment, is not a police force, okay? Its duties are defense, disaster relief, and support as outlined in the law. And the governor's role is that the regiment can only assist the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service or the Coast Guard when called upon by who? The governor. When called upon by the governor. Now that means that the Cayman Islands Regiment does not act independently, nor do they take over policing. Okay? And the Firearms Authority, regiment members, as I stated, may carry firearms, but only with authorization from their commanding officer. Now, I know a lot of you are maybe just a little taken back by the realities of that. And you can see on the screen as well, the governor acts in the governor's discretion. 7 says, except as provided otherwise in this law, in this exercise of the governor's powers to duties under this law and other enactments relating to matters of defense, including armed forces, the governor shall act in the governor's discretion, which ties straight into what Denny was saying yesterday. Okay, but it's a little bit muddled because here you have the law in actually black and white. And I shouldn't even say actually, because that kind of dilutes what the power of this law is. That clearly outlines exactly the powers and the duties and how it all came about. So when it comes to answering that question, do they take precedence over the police? No, it doesn't take precedence over the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service. Now, egos need to remain in check because sometimes we know what happens when the adrenaline rush is there. It is clear they do not. The Royal Cayman Islands Police Service remains the lead agency for law enforcement. And what we're seeing is that, again, for repeat and to make sure it sticks, the regiment supports them when the governor requests it. Okay? For example, in a major disaster or even natural disaster. Excuse me. So in practice, the RCIPS here in the Cayman Islands leads, the regiment supports, and the Defense Act makes that clear. They are complementary, not competing. That statement right there speaks a lot of the type of leadership then that we will need and in understanding their role. Okay? At the end of the day. So we looked then at it being reservist, voluntary, stipend, and a lot of these persons are actually working in the private sector. And this is why I'm saying there are some loopholes, and one that stands out to mention is that for those persons who volunteer in our regiment, who are, let's say, not working for a government body, it was a question that was asked, do they cover releasing employees without there being any disadvantage should they get injured, if they're sick, especially for private practice, or in the private sector. And how that works, as we're stated here in the Defense Act, is that, unfortunately, I couldn't find anywhere under the Defense Act where should a volunteer who's working in private sector actually gets injured or whatever, that, you know, they're covered. It's not explicit, right? The Act, again, established the regiment, first of all, its powers, its duties, and its structures. It was focused on disaster response, security support, discipline, and definitely command. And employment protection, the Act, as I stated, does not directly regulate private sector employment contracts. Neither does it actually cover benefits. We have the Labor Act here of the Cayman Islands that applies to all employers and definitely covers employees. But the key protections, what we're saying, is that in written contracts, employers must, let me use the word must, provide clear terms of employment. And I think this is one of the elements that should be now including in all contracts, that should their employees be inclined to volunteer as a member of the Cayman Islands Regiment, that somewhere in there it's baked into their contract. Okay? Because it is an option for persons who may wish to. And even with leave entitlement, sick leave, vacation, maternity, paternity leave, these are stuff now that is, especially the paternity part of it, is covered. Now we're looking more into that for the private sector under the Labor Act. And even termination rules as well. Employees cannot be unfairly dismissed without cause. Now, when it comes to the military and the regiment service, as I said, this is one of the things that should be a minor amendment to this act. There is no explicit clause in the Labor Act mandating that private employers must release staff for regiment duty without disadvantage. So this opens up a door for a national discussion, understanding the role of the regiment and people's choice of wanting to give of service or maybe have an interest in the uniform service. But what it really means for regiment members, when you compare private sector employees, public sector employees, and just looking at overall best practices, when it comes to public sector employees, government workers, to be honest, may have policies that actually allows them to release persons or allow their staff for regiment services without a loss in pay and benefits and that sort of stuff. But when it comes to private sector, protections really depend on employment contracts, mutual agreement and understanding by their employer, which is usually as a matter of discretion. And unless a specific policy really is in place, regiment services could affect their pay or even leave entitlements. It all depends on the amount of discussion that that member of staff want to have with their employer in the private sector, okay? But when you look at it from a national perspective and best practice, employers should be amenable, or even they should encourage to support employee service in the regiment. But it's not, I just want to make it clear, it's not a statutory requirement under the Defense Act. We're just hoping right now that it is in good faith. Now, there is, as I said now, there is a gap in the law. And unlike some countries where reserve forces have explicit job protection, we see that in the United States, uniform services, and even their Employment and Reemployment Rights Act. The Cayman Defense Act, for some reason, does not provide that. And that is something that is an easy fix based on this subject. And what it does, there is employee vulnerability because without proper contractual guarantees, private sectors, employees may actually have their pay reduced, loss of leave, and even dismissed for absent for duties if they don't have an understanding organization or an employer who's willing to understand exactly or allow their staff to give of service. So this is an area where us here in the Cayman Islands, may need clearer legislation and protection as well, or proper employer guidelines to ensure that regiment members are not at a disadvantage. Because as we continue to want to build this and invest in our people, at the end of the day, what we're seeing here with the Defense Act, it sets up the regiment, but it does not protect private employers right now, pay or benefits. And what we're also seeing is that those protections fall under the Labor Act in the private sector. And currently there's no automatic safeguard for private sector workers serving the regiment right now. So we're hoping that at the end of the day, as we continue to modernize, as we continue to mature, as we continue to accept this piece of legislation for what it is, also identify the loopholes, the risks, that easy amendments and clear civic engagement and education could actually go a long way. Good evening, caller. You're live on Sabrina Speaks. What's on your mind?
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm fine. Alain, I'm putting the best out thank you for yesterday, because boy, I'd feel bad. I still feel bad today too, but I'm a little better.
Well, hopefully you'll get better soon.
Yep. I did what you told me to. I went outside and sat in the sun, and I've been doing some ginger and all that sort of stuff. So, hey, what somebody had said the other day, you're hired. Give me your feedback.
I tuned in very late, so I missed a lot, but I just got the impression when you were speaking just now that you were saying that the regiment is really under the command of the RCIPS?
On where they sit right now as a department, they're no longer under Home Affairs. They're under Royal Cayman Islands Police Service, which is, I stand to be corrected, the Premier. No, I was just sitting for the organization with this administration, because former administration, they sat under Home Affairs.
Oh, okay.
Shaka
All right.
Zulu say, welcome, Uncle Danny. I tuned in late as well.
Hi.
I was the topic today was the Defense Act. I even went into Sandhurst and I broke it down. I had on the screen for the military services performed outside the Cayman Islands. And I also read in a little bit about the continuation of the regiment and the duties of the regiment. I went into detail in accordance to law.
My understanding of the duties of the regiment is that they're responsible for defense of the islands entirely. When it comes to internal matters, they would normally assist the police in relation to whether the police needs assistance in
the
something.
Coast Guard. In the Coast Guard.
But that power is separate and apart from their general obligation of defense of the islands, meaning externally. So, which you see, the one of the things that if you go to section 3 of the law,
a member of the regiment may perform military service, including training and non-combatant services, both in and outside of the islands in accordance to this law.
Right. But you notice that first comma?
The first comma comes military services, comma.
Right. So that means that a member of the regiment may be required to perform military services. And military services isn't going and get a latte. Okay.
Including, but the key word is non-combatant services. No. So they wouldn't be, is what they're saying, intent.
Who's saying
the law and by interpretation. Now, it could be from a different perspective.
No. That's just separate. They're separate clauses. So what it's saying is a member of the regiment may be required to perform military services, comma, and now a separate clause saying including training and non-combatant services. So in other words, the first clause is combatant services. That's why it's specifying including, because if military services meant non-combatant, then it wouldn't make sense to go on to say including non-combatant services, right? And then comma again, and then it's saying both in and outside of the islands in accordance with this law, meaning that those two previous clauses, this last clause applied to both of them. So military services could be both in and outside the island, and training and non-combatant services could also be in and outside of the islands in accordance with this law. So it's not that this is saying non-combatant services. This is saying combatant services and training and non-combatant.
Yes, it did. Yeah, this is what it's saying. And for the sake of those, again, because I know it's a little small on the screen, Section 3 says, and I quote, a member of the regiment may be required to perform military services, comma, including training and non-combatant services, comma, both in and outside the islands in accordance with this law.
So outside of the island, or let's say inside of in the Cayman Islands, either of the three islands, right?
Mm-hmm.
You someone who's a member of the regiment may be required to fight a war.
Hmm.
And they may be required to do training inside of the islands. And they may be required to do non-combat. This is the hurricane cleanup now,
Mhm,
non-combatant services. Or if they're outside of the islands, they may be required to do conduct in a war outside of the islands. They may be required to do training outside of the islands, or they may be required to do hurricane cleanup outside of the islands, or some other non-combatant service.
Okay.
So it's not limited to non-combatants. That's not what that's saying at all. Now I know politicians was trying to make it sound as if it was about cleaning up in the aftermath of hurricanes.
Yeah.
But that's not what the text said. And this is one of the things I put to Mr. Howell when he was in the town hall meeting
Meetings.
with the bill.
Mm-hmm.
Right? No one should be under any illusion that if your child is in the military, that they cannot go to war. You should not be under that illusion. I'm not saying necessarily that's a bad thing if we have a justified war and we have to defend ourselves. It is what it is, right? But we should not be of any illusion that can't happen.
That it can't be a reality. There was a question that was posted by Harry that obviously with the amount of commentary that was going on, I just wanted to get what I needed to deliver out today. It says, when the governor deploys the regiment to aid the police, how much power do they receive, even if under the oversight of the police? Now, even if, go ahead.
What do
Take
you
a jab
mean?
When the governor deploys the regiment to aid the police, how much power do they receive, even if under the oversight of the police?
Well, if it's a police operation and they need the military, then for the part where the military is needed, the military would have to decide, because the commissioner of police doesn't have military training. So even though you're assisting the police, it would be whoever's in charge of the military would have to make a decision about what military involvement is needed to do the goal that the commissioner of police is seeking to achieve.
So would that then rest on the decisions of the commanding officer of the regiment?
Yeah, yes. That's their job. They command officers to achieve a certain objective. Yeah.
But then it's saying then that the police, when the question was, well, who then take precedence once the governor deploys the regiment? Is it still the police, or it all depends on the situation?
Yes. In other words, if it's a police operation, to the extent that it doesn't involve fighting or whatever to a certain degree, it's police work.
Yeah.
But if something escalates beyond the capacity of the police,
right,
then he's handing that aspect of it over to the regiment.
Yes, which is why it's so technical and imperative that in the high-ranking positions then of the regiment, that they receive training. And
of course,
but this is why they're gone to Sandhurst. And we have a number of our locals and Caymanians as well who have actually been trained that the Cayman Islands people's money have paid.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not against the regiment. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I was against when I first came out really hard on what the line that the government was giving us, is that the government and the governor was willing to lie to us that this was about hurricane cleanup. I was just saying, don't speak to me like a child. Don't tell me nonsense that I know is wrong, because you have it written down in writing that contradicts what you're verbally saying, right? But, you know, defense is something that's necessary. Just level with the public. They look, sometimes life involves bad things and we need to be able to defend ourselves. Now, I don't think the Cayman Islands would ever be able to have a regiment that could, you know, fend off a large country.
Mm-hmm.
But it can certainly help us defend against like really serious criminal attacks of a smaller nature. And I know some people might think that's not actually a real risk,
Mm-hmm.
but that is not the case. I know of instances in which the RCIP, before you had the Coast Guard that we currently have,
Mm-hmm.
there are instances where the police, all they could actually do is sit, be quiet, and hope that the danger passed them by, because they were simply,
On
they would have
ill-equipped.
been,
Mm-hmm.
they would not have been able to survive. And so the capacity of the RCI, the police shouldn't really be doing that type of work beyond the borders.
Mm-hmm.
That's not police work. That's why we have a Coast Guard. That's a different style of defense.
Mm-hmm.
And the military is a different style of defense either, although the Coast Guard is somewhat closer to the regiment than it is
Right.
with the police.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm hoping that as
But
we go ahead.
one more thing. You see how we were talking about the right to life? Are you able to pull up the?
That's going to take me a little bit because
Okay.
I'm actually
Well,
trying to grab the definitions here because I know you're going to speak on this one.
well,
Go ahead.
about the right to life, right? So when you're thinking about whether it's the Coast Guard, whether you're thinking about the police
Mm-hmm.
or the regiment, there's a derogation to the right to life. And so depending on what a person is doing and
Mm-hmm.
what threat that particular person poses to society, the derogation under the right to life in the Bill of Rights and the Cayman Islands Constitution order
Mm-hmm.
allows the government to use force all the way up to taking a person's life if it is necessary to protect the society.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's spelled out in legislation that the kind of force that could be projected by the Coast Guard or by the regiment or
Mm-hmm.
even the police
Mm-hmm.
is provided for in law.
Yeah, we see here, and I have, Harry, I'm going to get to trying to post some of these comments. We see where the definitions is actually posted on the screen. And this is the Defense Law of 2020, that is one and seen, the Defense Act 2020, right? And we're seeing where the definition under this law means soldier means a member of the regiment below the rank of lance corporal. So you see the words that are being used even in definition. And it goes back to what you were saying, Denny, that really and truly what the law is saying and what was really pushed is two different things.
Yeah, you should be very, whenever a politician's lips are moving, you should be
Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.
No, that's the truth. That's a scientific approach to politics.
So, I mean, this whole topic, despite me being a bit under the weather, came about because of exactly what we were talking about yesterday, in
Um,
regards to the Constitution and the regiment. And then there were some questions asked about whether, and oh, Harry did do his research and he did say that, yes, he realized that at the end of the day, it was approved and allowed, that the UK was aware. Because remember, he was a bit off to say that,
Yeah.
how could we have her? He actually did his own research and proved otherwise. So yes, he's now been brought up to speed. But I still thought it was important for me to actually do a deep dive into this. And your voice of reason, as Michelle, the real Michelle, always say, thank you for your voice of reason, Mr. Denny. Hugs. You bring a smile to my face every time. So there you go. But I really felt it was important for me to bring this to actually say and show exactly what you were alluding to yesterday, that the law is saying one thing and then something else is being pushed.
Yeah, if you want to know whether something is enforced or not in the island, there's two things you can do. You can look at the Gazette page to see when it was published in the Gazette, because no law can be brought into force
Unless it's gazetted.
And then secondly, you can go to legislation.gov.ky, and on there it'll say whether it's enforced. And sometimes there'll be like there's a little bubble on there that you can click on where you can see notes, and it might explain, well, everything is enforced except section something, or whatever the case might be. It'll tell you, well, this particular section isn't enforced.
Right.
Right. But it spells it all out on the legislation.gov.ky page, which is I think it's a work in progress to go something towards like the legislation page in the UK.
Right.
But it's just really in PDF form at the moment.
We have another comment I'm going to read two. Actually, Shakazulu says, why can't the regiment be mandatory for all youth who are not going to college or take part in other civil services? I believe this is much needed for Caymanian youth development. And it continues to say, develop a true sense of responsibility for his or her land. And then Melita also made a very interesting comment. Says Royal Cayman Islands Police Service have a lot to catch up with their officers. I've proven firsthand with a simple first aid response. Embarrassing. So what do you think in regards to Shaka Zulu's comment about it, with being in our young people? Remember now, the cadets are there, but it ends at 18.
Well, I don't believe either the cadets or the regiment should be mandatory. And I know that some people might see it differently, but my reason for taking the position I do is that when it comes to the regiment and people who are defending the very lives of people on the island, we don't want people there who don't want to be there, right? You want somebody who is there because they want to be. You understand? This is not like just some like desk job where if you do a bad job, it doesn't matter. You understand?
Right.
This matters. Everything you do matters, not just to yourself, but to the entire island. So this is you see, there's this idea that people, should be required. I don't agree with that. When it comes to discipline, we do need to be. We need to look at how families are able to survive, whether they're able to stay together, children get an education, you have employment. You need stability in homes. And one of the things we need to do is we need to get away from this idea where there are some people who think, like some women in particular think, well, I don't need a man. I'm afraid to tell you that the research contradicts that view. Children need both parents. And we need to fix the fundamental parts of society that's broken. And discipline is a part of that in how you raise children from the ground up.
In single parent, or be it one gender or the other, but the
Yeah.
importance of having both.
Yeah, because men and women don't think alike, and I think that is for a fundamental reason. Because
We don't.
yeah, and there's the and but that isn't necessarily a bad thing,
Mhm.
because men and women have different roles in a child's life, right? There's
That's another
something.
episode of Sabrina Speaks, Danny. Leave it to you.
Yeah.
Leave it to
No,
you.
well, I'm just saying that when it comes to discipline, that
Mhm.
you need to work out discipline before you get to a military.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because when you get there, it's all about discipline, and it's about um, respect and commitment to a cause that's not for someone who is unsure about what to think about themselves and society.
Harry is asking a question from yesterday. He says, and he corrected, question for Mr. Denny. He said yesterday the UK is a master of the art of deception. And sorry for that, but how could that be true when the UK has exercised its power to suspend constitution of British overseas as recently as 2009?
Well, it's not one or the other. They
Oh.
have the power. They have the power to suspend. They even have the power to do that to what some think is the Cayman Islands Constitution. It's not really the Cayman Islands Constitution. It's the UK's Constitution for Cayman, which is why.
But even with the amendments that
Yeah.
we were so involved in, you still say the fundamental core of it was written, which we shared that history yesterday, was written not by Caymanians, even though there were, I think in 2009, an amendment where what happened, the core of the Constitution was not written by locals.
None of it was written by locals. We made suggestions, and the UK decided to include in their authoring of that document some of our suggestions. But it's not us doing it. It's that we made recommendations and they accepted some of our recommendations. But you have to go to the end of the Constitution order to realize that what it says, I can't remember the exact wording, but I'm going to paraphrase something to the effect of, notwithstanding the generality of the foregoing, the UK retains the right to legislate for good governance.
Correct.
And so what that means is that if things go wrong, they can exercise the nuclear option to step in. So they can exercise the nuclear option to step in and correct what they perceive to be going wrong. So essentially, how Cayman is functioning at the moment is that you have a government who has responsibility for administering the country, and we give advice to the governor on a number of issues, and one of them is security, because that's the governor's direct responsibility. And we can write legislation, we can draft legislation, and effectively when they go to the House and they say, we passed this bill, they're giving advice to the governor about what should be the law, and if the governor accepts that advice, the governor can put it into law. And if the governor rejects the advice, the governor can say, "We'll take it back to the House and reconsider it." And if they, get in this lock jam, that the UK can legislate directly for Cayman if they choose.
I see where Harry has says, but if the Cayman wants to amend its constitution, does the UK always accept these amendments? They don't have to.
It's not our
Constitution. You keep saying that. Yeah.
It's not ours. I know it is called the Cayman Islands Constitution. Think about it like this. If you had a company named the absolute best burger in the entire world, does that mean that the burgers you cook are actually the best burgers in the world? No, it's just the name of the company.
Yeah.
right? And the Cayman Islands what the operative word in the title is the word order.
Order.
What does the word order mean?
It's a directive. It's given. These are the rules. These are
And
parameters.
who gave the order?
The United Kingdom.
It's the Privy Council of the
Council of the
United
Kingdom. Yeah.
Right. So it's not us making the Constitution. It is the UK making a decree that this document will exist. And the reason why we can't amend it is because we didn't create it, right? Only the creator of a document can amend the document. And so it would be very helpful if we bear in mind that it's not our Constitution.
I see where Shaka Zulu says, respectfully, this is when you were talking about the youth. I respectfully, this is where Uncle Denny and I disagree. Service to country should be part of our youth's upbringing. This part of what's missing with the Cayman. This is what's missing with.
Well, I don't disagree that with that statement that it should be part of the upbringing. You see, the only thing I'm saying is that if you raise someone to do what she suggests, then that person would either say, well, I think I could serve in the regiment and do a good job, so I'm going to voluntarily sign up. That would be a statement that you did a good job of raising a child. You know what I'm saying? So I don't necessarily disagree with what was just said there. It's just, and all I'm saying is I don't think it should be a requirement, because while you think it's a good idea to be in the regiment, you don't want to be there if you don't. You don't want someone to be there if they don't want to be there, because they're not going to do a good job.
And Shaka Zulu also said, all youth should be made to develop meaningful alliances. I hope I'm getting that right. And responsibility to their country by means of government-sponsored programs such as Boys and Girls Scouts Regiment. That's what Shaka, I think. Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that statement. One of the other things I'd say is what we've been doing on this program is been talking about a variety of things that relate to public administration, like understanding the structure of government and laws and why they're important. Well, think about it like this. Why does the West, generally speaking, hold the views that it holds about what is right and wrong? Those right and wrong things came from, it started out with Judaism. And so the moral law of God, and then the Christian influence later on shaped the Western world. And so our sense of right and wrong comes from the Ten Commandments, right? Generally speaking, that's at the base. Now, what has happened to the Western world in recent times?
For those who believe in Christianity.
Well, you see, but this is what the problem is. So we have a system that was designed to be operated by people who share core values like don't murder, and then that system has been controlled most recently by people who don't share those views. So you end up with things like abortion for any reason. That's not consistent with thou shalt not murder. What you see what I'm saying? So you can say that you don't believe in Christianity, but it's I'm not talking about Christianity. I'm talking about morality.
Right.
Right? So right and wrong. So think about it for a second. Thou shalt not murder. Well, society, generally speaking, thinks that we shouldn't murder. Thou shalt not steal. That's a commandment. Well, society generally believes that you shouldn't steal from people. There are exceptions, of course. Criminals feel differently, but we don't say, well, just because they disagree, we'll just respect their views and allow them to carry on,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have to take a position, because the role of the state is to prevent one group of people from um, wrongfully impacting another group of people. So if your car was stolen and the state said, well, that's their opinion and we respect those diverse views, you wouldn't feel too great about that,
Mm.
right? You would want the state to get your property back. And so, but what the problem is that each generation has to be taught why does things work the way they work.
Mm-hmm.
Each generation has to develop that appreciation that the way things work is because we're trying to balance the rights of everyone and to be fair to people and to live in safety and to
Right.
increase our prosperity, as a group in certain ways and as individuals in certain ways. And why that's beneficial, because if we don't teach each generation these things, then they lose sight of why it's done the way it is. And then they end up thinking that a man could be a woman, which is certainly not the case.
Harry throws out a question here to you, where he was asking whether or not you would rather get rid of the connection between the UK and other altogether and go independent. No, but there was another one. Okay, there it is. So, Danny, would you want to scrap the current constitution and have a constitutional convention in the Cayman Islands to write a new one? Or would you rather get rid of the connection to the United Kingdom altogether and go independent? That's a question to you, Danny.
Currently, the way that Caymanians think about, let me just say it this way, the degree of political maturity that we have in the Cayman Islands, we wouldn't be a successful country if we went independent. That's what I was explaining yesterday.
Mm-hmm. But it has been repeated over and over and over here a number of times.
Yeah.
Exactly. The key word of what you just said is maturity.
Yes. You cannot succeed unless you have that maturity, because along with that maturity comes a degree of discipline that's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Some people act in very emotional ways, and some people let their pride get in the way when it comes to making decisions. And when you're talking about making decisions that affect a lot of people, you have to put your pride aside.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're making serious decisions that impact a lot of people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So no, I mean, that's not something I would advocate at the moment, even though it's something I would like to see. I'm not sure that Cayman will reach that level of maturity anytime soon. I just don't see it.
In your lifetime, I don't think in mine either. I have said it here, despite being subtle. And this is by no means, but the word maturity says a lot. And even and you look at public discussions and dialogues and forums like this, I don't even get the interest, an overwhelming sense of interest in political maturity, because you can see by the level of discussions that we're having here, we're trying to break it down line by line. The interest is not there. But you mentioned the word independence, and then bang, you get all of this coming from one end, you get another end coming in. It's just chaos without proper research. And then that demonstrates level of maturity.
Well, what is it that's coming from the end regarding independence?
No. What I'm saying is based on, and I'm just speaking off of listening to other forums before we even born. I'm just thinking back of when the word independence coming up or it feels that way. This is by all means not here in this show or nothing recently that I've heard. I'm just thinking about previous discussions and public debates, and we could see the comments that maturity is just not there.
I agree because, like, I used to talk about people needing to properly be informed about what our rights are in the UN, and what does the right to self-determination mean.
Mean.
And just talking about whether you have a right or not was controversial,
Correct.
right? And so for the life of me, the only person who I would think that wouldn't want somebody to have a right to decide what their future would be is a dictator.
Right. You mentioned
Right.
that on, I think, Sandra's show. It sounds to me like we more are leaning more for a communist dictator styleship of government than
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
for, you mentioned that.
Yeah, but I'm glad you brought that up. So what's happening in the U.S. right now? You have Democrats and Republicans, and what has happened is that the relationship between the two parties had deteriorated quite significantly, and there's a degree of dishonesty, deception, hypocrisy that's happening in the public discourse that's quite disappointing, because America represented for many people the ability to escape very hostile environments
Mhm.
in other countries. And so there is this view that when you see, for example, the Trump being elected, there is some that think, okay, on the right side of, I mean, right meaning the political right,
Political right. Yeah.
right, um, that is a warning sign to those who are on the right. And the guy Mamdani
Mm-hmm.
is a warning to those who are on the left. And the way some people view it is that despite we have these extreme examples on both sides, it's almost as if people are not paying attention. Right?
Well, it's
And
definitely unfolding. You can read the
yes,
headlines, you see it. It is what it
that's right.
is. Yeah.
And what you have to understand is that when they say democratic socialist, that doesn't mean it's a friendly thing. That's essentially communist,
Mhm.
right? And so the question is this: can you show me an example of communism anywhere in history that has delivered on its promises?
Which goes into this question that Harry made about whether or not, oh my God, a question came in. Do you think that the Cayman Islands could keep its standard of living and its current tax regime if we were to go, if the Cayman Islands would go independent?
That would depend on the political maturity. Because
Again, it goes back to that.
I'll give you a simple example. What does it mean to maintain that standard of living? Well, you'd have to be disciplined about
Spending
finance
and capital projects and yeah.
and if you owe a bill, you would need to pay it. The day that you decide that you're not going to pay it, then that's the day that everything would come crumbling down. Because this is what I was talking about yesterday when I made reference to fiat currency.
Yes.
You hear the phrase in the US, the full faith and credit of the US government, right? Well, what that really means is that the US government is promising that if you lend them money, they'll pay you back. But you see, the US government is actually running a very sophisticated Ponzi scheme, albeit legally. Now, they'll put you in prison if you try to run a Ponzi scheme, but they're running a Ponzi scheme themselves, because what they're doing
The
is that
petrodollar.
is that they're borrowing money. So when people buy
30 seconds.
bonds, when people buy bonds, they're lending money to the government, And when the government can't pay for it, then they bring down the interest rates, they refinance in the hopes that they'll be able to better pay their obligations, and they just keep it rolling over as much as they can. That's a Ponzi scheme.
There you go. Leave me there. Time does not permit us to go on. Thank you so much, Danny. All the best.
Take care. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you for all of you. And I hope that you again enjoyed this very insightful episode of Sabrina Speaks. And wrapping it round as I close this evening's episode, readiness is not about preparing for war. It's about preparing for life. And I hope, based on the discussions that we've had here in the past 2 evenings, that you're able to see that more and more each day. It's about ensuring that we here in the Cayman Islands can stand steady, protect our people, and sustain our communities until help actually arrives. Contrary and exactly what the law says, it is what it is. The Defense Act give the regiment its powers. We can explore that and continue to explore it, but it's also brings us training. It has been a pleasure bringing you this episode of Sabrina Speaks, and because resilience isn't just the regiment's job, it's all of ours. Have a good evening. Love you all lots. Until tomorrow, have a safe and blessed Tuesday.
That's a wrap for today's edition of Sabrina Speaks. Thank you for tuning in and for being part of the conversation. Remember, the dialogue doesn't stop here. Stay engaged, stay informed, and most importantly, stay empowered. We'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m., same time, same place, right here on CMR TV and radio, where your voice matters and your truth is heard. Until then, Cayman, take care of yourself and each other.
That's it for today's edition of Sabrina Speaks, where your voice matters, your story counts, and your truth is always welcome. Join us weekdays from 5 until 6:30 p.m. right here on CMR TV as we dive into the topics that matter most to you. Catch the show live or on demand at cmrtv.com. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram so you never miss a moment. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and always speak your truth.